This week, one of my students described me as a social linguist, and I really like the term because I find that the whole benefit of being multilingual is connecting with people. And I was thinking today about why I speak some languages so much better than others. It really is a reflection of the people that I know and the people that I enjoy. The reason I speak Spanish a lot better than, say, Swahili, which I know very little of, I just don't know many people who speak Swahili. I find it fascinating that some guys can study languages that they're not going to use. They don't really have access to the target language community, and they hope to use it someday. And of course, there's always surprises. You study some exotic language, and it turns out that you get to use it later. For me, it's not that way, and that's cool that other guys have other approaches. For me, the languages that I speak are the ones that I have contact with, and the ones that I speak well are the ones that I have lots of contact with, and the ones that I speak very little of are ones that I don't have as much contact with as I would like to. So I like the idea of being a social linguist. My languages are a reflection of the people who are within my social sphere. Some of my neighbors speak Polish, so I speak some Polish. Lots of my friends and some of my family now are from Spanish-speaking families, so my Spanish is much better. Some of my best friends are French-speaking, so my French is stronger than some of the other languages that I speak. My German is not that strong because all my German-speaking friends speak English so well, which means that they've got to stretch a little bit and say, well, I could speak English better than he speaks German, but there's one couple in particular who are willing to speak German with me all the time. So that's really cool. But my languages are a reflection of my social life and the social sphere that I move in. And this is important to what I've been talking about the force cycle, that you learn your languages and you build your language skills by working through a particular cycle in contact with the target language community. I'll be looking at my notes a lot. You may see my eyes going down, but I need my notes for this. I want to be sure that I cover everything well. The first phase in working through the force cycle is establishing phase one, and this is what the F is for in the acronym FORCE. F is for focus. What you want to do is select a feature of the target language or some communication theme that you want to work on, that you want to master. So the first cycles for most students are generally the same. Everybody has to know how to introduce themselves, to say hi, and to use courtesy language, please and thank you and excuse me, to get somebody's attention. Hey, excuse me, do you speak Swahili? You can make one of your focuses a language skill or a conversation theme that everybody needs. It's a good idea at the beginning to think in terms of stuff that you're going to need all the time and stuff that you're going to use often. This is always the test for me. When you're learning vocabulary and you're developing your skills, you want to learn the things that you will need soon and the things that you will need often. That will really help you determine a good focus for your force cycle. A list of possible themes, it's really endless, but things that you're going to talk about all the time are going to be family. You'll talk about yourself as a language student. That's a really important one. It's strange that often when we're learning new languages, we learn numbers and we learn colors and days of the week and family members, and my pet peeve that I've mentioned before is we learn all the names of the animals in the jungle or something, which is pretty useless for most people. But one thing you'll talk about every time you open your mouth in another language is, why are you learning this language, and how long have you been studying? And they'll talk about your pronunciation or whether they could understand you. They'll talk about you as a language student, so be prepared for that. That's a real good focus for a cycle. You can make one of your 4 cycles talking about your work, talking about computers maybe. Maybe you work with computers, and this is something that you'll use soon and often. So you want to learn all the vocabulary around computers and keyboards and monitors and all of that sort of stuff, and bugs and spam and all that sort of thing. You will often have opportunity to talk about your home country and your mother tongue. Those are great themes for a focus. So, first step in the force cycle is select a focus. What are you going to learn how to talk about? What are you going to learn how to be able to do? There's actually two different kinds of focus that you can set for your cycle. One of them is a theme or a topic. So this determines something that you will be able to talk about. For example, your family or your work or computers, as I mentioned. The other is you can make a focus one of the characteristics or one of the patterns or structures of your target language. You can develop a skill, an ability to perform a certain task in the target language. So one of the things I set out to do, for example, was to be able to order coffee in every language that I run into here in Vancouver. And one language that's very new to me, I mean, I'm just getting started and I hesitate to say anything on YouTube in Chinese, but I learned how to say, let me think here. 我要一杯咖啡 我要一杯咖啡 and so I repeat that. I can order coffee in Mandarin Chinese. Actually, as slow as that is and as I hesitate, I got my coffee tonight. I ordered my coffee in Mandarin Chinese and I asked the barista, did you understand everything I said? She said, yeah, that was good, So, I mean, my Chinese is super limited, but that's a focus for me. And that's a good one for me because I'm always ordering coffee. The focus describes what you're going to learn how to do, and you often start your focus with the words, or you include the words how to. I'm going to learn how to talk about my family. I'm going to learn how to order coffee. I'm going to learn how to talk about stuff I did a year ago. That's more of a structural focus. You could decide to learn all kinds of things. For example, how to talk about what you did in the past. That is a structural focus. You could learn how to do something, like how to make a request, how to agree or disagree. I like to tease some of my students about their political views. It's mostly so we can practice agreeing and disagreeing. You could talk about how to give instructions, and one of the things that we do in some of our language classes is we practice giving instructions to the babysitter. Don't burn the house down. Don't drink while we're out. Don't spend all your time on the phone. And we have fun learning how to give instructions. Learn how to refuse an invitation or accept an invitation. That will make for a good focus. When you're picking a focus, your brain is most receptive to the things that you're actually going to need and use. So if you are an auto mechanic, you will find it fairly easy to develop a focus around your work. You'll talk about, rebuilding a transmission or something. If you are a florist, you'll know all the names of the flowers, and somebody else won't. Your brain will receive and learn and hold on to the stuff that you're going to use, and especially the stuff that you're going to need. When you know that you have to talk with your in-laws in Portuguese, you can do it. But if you don't really need to, then you won't. So focus on stuff that you're going to need soon and often. Pick themes and functions that will be widely useful to you right away. What do you need to be able to do first? So think ahead. Okay, I'm learning Russian. What do I have to be able to do next? Well, I have to be able to talk with my in-laws and talk about what our new baby is doing nowadays. So that's a great focus. Talking about the baby with the in-laws in Russian. Learn to say 10 things. So there's a good start. That's a good focus. Step one of the force cycle. Talk about stuff that you're going to do regularly and often, and it should be something specific enough so that you can build a cycle around it. So if you have a focus, if you have a focus that is too broad, you're just lost. If you say, I'm going to be able to talk about the nature of the universe, forget it. If you say, I'm going to be able to talk about ordering coffee in Polish, I'm going to learn how to say 10 things about our new baby in Russian. Something really specific, something that you can describe in a very short sentence. I'm going to be able to, or I'm going to learn how to, and finish the sentence. It doesn't mean you're going to master everything in the language that you would need to talk about flowers or computers or something, but you're going to say, I'm going to buy a new hard drive for my computer in Japanese. That's a great focus. It's specific, it's manageable, it's something that you can describe in a force cycle, and you can work through all the other steps of the force cycle. It's specific and it's measurable. Look for a focus that is practical and familiar to you. You'll find it very difficult to learn language stuff around themes that you just don't care about. But stuff that you do care about, you'll find very practical. So for one person, they might want to talk about their faith in their target language. If they do, they'll find that easy to learn. Somebody else just doesn't care. This is not a big part of their life. But they'll be excellent at talking about camping and hiking. So pick something that's practical for you, something that is a part of your real life. You will talk in your target language, for the most part, to the same degree in your target language as you do in your mother tongue. So learning to talk about things that you just don't care about in your mother tongue is going to be tough in your second language. But think through, what do you talk about a lot? I talk about coffee. I talk about my family. I love to talk about my wife. I talk about my business. I talk about languages. So those are the first things that I get good at talking about in any language, any new language that I'm learning. In Chinese, as I said, my Chinese is super limited. I could write everything down on half a piece of paper right now, but I can say 我说的不好, I speak badly. 我说的不好中文, I speak Chinese badly. I mean, I can say that because this is something that, every conversation I have in Chinese is one of the first things I need to say. I speak lousy Chinese. So that's useful for me. But to talk about the history of the political system in China, there's going to be a long time before that's going to be a focus on my horizon. It's not going to be one of my force cycles. But talking about my Chinese and my interest in the Chinese language and ordering coffee in Chinese, that's practical for me. When you determine a focus for your force cycle, you're doing two things. You're narrowing your preparation efforts to a single manageable task. So when you head out to use your target language, you're not going to talk about everything under the sun, and you're not going to have to be able to talk about everything that might happen, but you're going to do something specific. Talk about the baby. You're going to talk about ordering coffee. It's narrowing your preparation and saving yourself from surprises. You're not going to go out and have a wide open conversation. You're going to exercise that. This is one of the other purposes of having a specific focus, is that you will exercise some control over the conversation. So when you go out to talk about, for example, buying a coffee, you're making sure that you're not going to end up in a conversation about reading poems in Chinese. You're limiting it. You're specifying the topic, and you're a little bit manipulating the conversation so that the other person is going to talk with you about coffee. Do you want a big one, a small one? That's what happened to me tonight when I ordered my coffee in Chinese. The barista asked me, do you want a small, a large, a medium coffee? But I was forcing the topic or the theme to stay in something that I had a few words for. So we didn't get talking about what was happening in the cafe. We only talked about coffee and me trying to order the coffee. So that's one of the advantages of having a specific force for your a specific focus for your force cycle. You're limiting the conversation. You're exercising some control, so that when you get into the later parts of the force cycle, you're safe and you're prepared and you can get something done. And you don't get beyond your proficiency level. This is very helpful. When you select your focus, it means that you're going to walk into some part of the world of your target language community where you are at least a little bit prepared. For sure, you're going to run into some stuff that you can't talk about, and you're going to run into some words that you haven't heard, or something's going to get a little bit beyond you. That's wonderful. That just tells you where the growing edge is. That tells you that, okay, there's where I need to go. That's where my next cycle needs to go. So specifying the focus narrows your preparation, gives you some control, and keeps you from getting beyond your proficiency level. You have to take responsibility as the language learner for keeping the conversation going. One of the comments that I got on one of my previous videos asked, it's easy enough to get talking, but how do you keep the conversation going? Because it's not just you giving a speech, it's you engaging in two-way conversation and connected discourse, a bunch of sentences all together. So you can keep the conversation going by doing a few things. One of them is prepare. Make sure that you've got something to say and that you are ready to engage in a conversation, even if it's a 2-minute conversation, especially at the beginning. My goal in Chinese is not to have a conversation about dark roast and light roast coffee, and I can't even talk about stir sticks or anything. My goal is, I asked for a coffee, I got a coffee, and I was told that I said it correctly. That's cool. So I prepared. The other thing, you have to be, when you prepare, you have to be ready to talk, ready to listen, and you should have practiced enough so that you are secure that you will be able to talk about this predetermined topic. So we'll talk about that in a couple of in a few of the videos ahead. But in the conversation, you're going to arrive feeling ready. You're a little bit safer because you're not walking in, as we say in English, cold turkey, just trying to go off the cuff or unprepared, spontaneous conversation about an unplanned topic. The focus says that you are going to determine the topic and you're going to limit the topic to some degree. You need to be able to demonstrate a few things to the person you're speaking with. You need to be able to demonstrate that you're paying attention. In English, we do this by saying things like, "Oh, really?" Not that we don't believe the person we're listening to, but we say, "Really? Oh, wow. Oh, you're kidding. Ah, yes. Ah." And being able to say those sorts of things, these really small words, are really important in having a natural sort of conversation at any proficiency level. So look for those kinds of things. Moses McCormick mentions this often in his videos about having these connecting words that allow you to expand on what you usually find in a textbook. Getting some natural phrasing in there and saying, "Oh, wow, oh, cool." All of that kind of stuff. So look for that. Show that you're paying attention. Show that you understand. You nod and say yeah and say aha. The equivalent in your target language. Show that you're enjoying the opportunity to talk. Be sure to thank people for speaking with you in your target language. And give these signals. Don't just stand there staring, but acknowledge that the person is speaking with you. At least blink your eyes. Show that you're awake and alert, and smile. Pay attention, because really, when you're learning the language, you have to use all of your senses to take in every possible bit of information that's available to you. So show that to the person who's speaking with you, that you're straining, you're trying, and you're soaking up everything that you can. This is a wonderful moment when you're getting to use your target language, and you want to show that you're getting something out of it. What will happen when you're working your way through a 4 cycle is you will be showered with natural, real language centered on a predictable theme. So you're going to get this is like a lesson that you didn't even have to pay for. You go to the restaurant, you order your meal in Tagalog, and the person who's speaking with you is not a teacher, but you're getting natural, real language from a native speaker. A Filipino is talking to you in Tagalog. I mean, you can't buy those kind of lessons. Lessons are good. You should buy some lessons. Pay a teacher. But this is a cool thing. Go out, work your way through a 4 cycle, talk with native speakers of your target language or whatever you can. You can do this by selecting a specific focus and predetermining what the topic's going to be about. You'll get a stream of native quality speech. This is a native speaker talking to you in the language that they speak perfectly. It feeds your mind with this new language, and it builds your proficiency. Working your way through a series of 4 cycles will really build confidence in you, because with each cycle, every time you work through one of these things, you will gain another element of linguistic competence. You'll say, okay, what can I do now? Not just what have I studied, but what can I do? I can order coffee, I can talk about my family, I can ask a few questions about the person I'm speaking with, I can talk about the fact that I'm learning their language and maybe draw them into being my language coach and letting me practice again the next time I run into this person. and you will develop the ability to talk about new things and new subjects and explore the target language culture. Find out things that you just won't find in a textbook. You're engaging with the real culture and the real people, and that's the fun. That keeps you motivated too. You will be able to sense and actually reassure yourself that you're making real progress. It's not just what chapter am I on, but I can handle an increasing number of new situations. So, tonight I can say hi. I can ask somebody their name in Tagalog. I can order a cup of coffee in Tagalog. So that's a list of force cycles that I've worked through. So the focus of my cycles have been things like saying hello at different times of the day, talking about my name, asking the other person their name, asking them if they can speak Tagalog, saying that I can speak a little bit of Tagalog. These are force cycles. So now I can count these and say, man, I can do some things in Tagalog, rather than I've studied, present tense verbs or something. Well, I could. I mean, that could be a focus too. I can talk about stuff that I do frequently or that I do all the time. That might be a focus. But you get a sense of confidence when you say, I can do some things. I can accomplish certain tasks in my target language. You will probably have the same focus a few times over and over. Like when you're talking about your experience as a language student. First time all you'll be able to say is, I only speak a little bit of your language. Thank you for speaking with me. Later on, you'll be able to say all kinds of things. I love your language. My pronunciation is terrible and I'm working on it. And wow, I love speaking Chinese, but I find the tones kind of hard. And you can keep working this focus. So you'll say, okay, I'm talking about my experience as a language student, and my next focus is talking about learning tones in Chinese. That's a great focus. And so then you'll work through the other steps of the force cycle. So the first one is focus, and then we'll move on to the next one. But let me get to that in a moment. Use each force cycle and each focus to move you toward your long-term and short-term objectives. So at first, my goal in Chinese is just to be able to say anything that somebody else can understand. That's a short-term goal. So I said to the barista tonight, when I ordered my coffee, could you understand what I was saying? Did it sound clear enough that if I was talking to somebody who spoke no English at all, would I get a cup of coffee in Beijing or something? She said, oh yeah. So that's a short-term goal. My long-term goals are to accumulate enough of these force cycles and enough of this competence around various themes and to develop what I call thematic fluency, that I could talk about all kinds of everyday things. For me, coffee's an everyday thing. Getting a coffee. Talk about my family. Talk about my experience as a language student and my experience as a language teacher. These are some of my long-term objectives, and working my way through the force cycle accumulates all the little bits and pieces that will get me there. First step is setting the focus. There will always be more to accomplish, but reaching each mark and working your way through each force cycle assures you that you're actually making progress, because you can say, wow, I can do this, and I can do that, and I can do that, and I couldn't do those things before. Because I can look back on the force cycles that I've done and say, wow, I've got a whole bunch of new competence, I've got a whole bunch of new proficiencies. So start off with a focus, a real specific focus, something that's manageable, something that's practical, something that you're going to use soon, something that you're going to use often. Set something specific, and then you can move on to the next cycle, the next phase of the force cycle, which is O is for organize. So that's what I'll talk about in the next video. Follow me there. See you there.